Today I want to talk about the concept of media distancing. So, the pandemic media that we're exposed to is especially toxic. You can see some of the sample headlines here. COVID-19 causes sudden stroke in young adults. All of us are familiar with these heat maps that come out with these swirling circles of disease incidents. It looks like something out of a movie. And it's very similar to some of the movies like Pandemic that have been out there. So, as we can imagine, this intensity of toxic media exposure is absolutely having an impact on our immune system, especially because when we read news headlines, almost everything, 90% of the content on our news readers are all related to the pandemic. There's hardly any normal, regular news to break that up. And we've talked before in prior Covideos about the link between stress, emotions, and those chemical messengers called cytokines, which in excess can damage our cells and lead to severe COVID-19 complications. So this kind of shows that when we have a sensation of internal threat here on the left, it activates our immune system, and that in turn will activate the central and peripheral immune cytokine network. And then that will lead to different symptoms. From an external threat, we can activate what we call the HPA axis. That's our endocrine system. And both are really interrelated. So when the endocrine stress system is activated, it will activate immune cells, and that will cause cytokines to get released. When cytokines are activated, that will also activate our stress system. So really, both of these mechanisms feed each other and increase the physiological response to stress. So since I'm telling you that media can be similar to a toxic drug, we actually have to restrain ourselves and really treat this like a drug. And I want to go through a couple of tips that I've been using personally and sharing with my patients who are consumed by this media. The first principle is you want to limit your total dose exposure of media. The second thing is you want to time the dose of media appropriately. The third is you want to resort to high quality sourcing. And the last is you want to modify your state when you're consuming this media. So with limiting the dose, we don't want to spend more than 45 to 60 minutes daily on pandemic news. Less is actually better. You want to schedule a consistent media time block. A lot of us are taking media dosages in a slow drip continuously throughout the day where we keep checking headlines and notifications. We're getting messages from coworkers, friends, family, etc. So that constant hypervigilant state is absolutely chronically activating our immune system. So really set aside that time and show some discipline in consuming this intense media. The second thing is the dose timing. When are we actually consuming this media? So I would say that when you first wake up in the morning, hopefully you're not sleeping with your devices in your room. I would avoid looking at media first thing when you wake up in the morning. When we wake up in the morning, we have a natural rise in the stress hormone cortisol, and we should use that activation to move, to maybe do some breathing exercises, to meditate, to take a walk. Immediately exposing yourself to this sort of activation might amplify your natural morning cortisol rise. The other thing is when you actually activate yourself first thing when you wake up in the morning with this sort of stressful media, it can actually impair your sleep cycle. So those of us that wake up in a stressed state, a really emotionally stressed out state, that is actually disruptive to our prior night's sleep. So really keep that in mind. The other thing is we want to avoid within 90 minutes of bedtime, avoid media dosing within 90 minutes of bedtime. The lights from the screens can disrupt our melatonin, and we did a prior Covideo on that. But in addition to that, even if you're wearing the blue blocking lenses or using your screen dimmers, this sort of exposure can really disrupt the sleep onset time, making it harder to fall asleep. And even if you fall asleep fine, it can disrupt the quality of your sleep. So many of my patients that are tracking their sleep using various trackers are finding that they're getting less deep phase sleep when they're exposed to intensive media, especially close to bedtime. So high quality sourcing, just like we want to source our food from good quality origins, we should pick 2 to 3 trusted sources. This could be the Johns Hopkins website. It could be a trusted research or medical website. It could be your public health department website. Mainly you want to have objective scientific sources. You want to avoid the politicized news channels and all the sensational news media. I know it's hard to completely avoid it. Sometimes that's going to come across your phone and device, but just sort of ignore it or just read it in a very passive manner. But really pick very high quality sourcing so we don't activate those emotions that can really overactivate our immune system. And then finally, optimize your state. So when you are actually reviewing this sort of media, you want to make sure you're in the right mental state or frame of mind. Engage your frontal cortex, that Einstein part of the brain, because that has less of an impact on your immune system versus the limbic system. If you're reading these news headlines emotionally, like, oh my God, I'm going to be on a ventilator, I'm going to die, what's happening with this, condition in children? If you can be a little bit more objective, a little bit more logical and rational as you consume media information, it will not have as much of a cytokine surge effect on your immune system. The second thing is I tend to pay attention to my breathing while I'm reading. And I do this even while I'm working or if I'm in a meeting that might be kind of high stress. Engage that diaphragmatic breathing. And I talk about that a lot in my prior Covideos and also in my COVID survival guide. So really do slow breathing involving your belly. Maybe even put your hand on your belly while you're reading this news. Have some sort of calming reading ritual. So maybe you'll have some herbal tea or a cup of your favorite coffee, put on some background music. If it's in the evening, which we don't recommend, at least put some calming music, light some candles, but make it a very calm state in which you're consuming this media. And if there is a news story that's making you nervous and anxious, simply stop the dose, stop the media dosage that you're consuming because it's going to really overactivate you. And if you do read something that is activating and instilling hypervigilance and fear, consider reading or doing something completely relaxing and fun after that media dose so it can counteract that stress activating response. So really, like I said, treat this like a drug. So we have to dose it, time it, and be in the proper state when we consume this media. And finally, I just want you to be aware of the fact that our immune system can sense even the most subtle forms of anxiety, hypervigilance, and danger. So you might feel completely normal reading the media, but our immune system can pick up on those subtle sensations of anxiety or hypervigilance, and then it can activate that cytokine alarm. So that's why we want to really limit our dose to specific time periods and not just let it drip into our eyes throughout the day. I hope this helps you a lot. I know it's helped me a lot to really limit the media consumption dosage, and I wish you all peace of mind. Thanks very much for watching. Download my free COVID ebook and check out my resources. Subscribe to my Covideo series and follow me on Instagram.